In order to fully understand the current situation of inclusive Palestinian, Arab, and Jewish schools in Israel, we must dive into the history of Israel and the infamous conflict between Palestinian Arabs and Jews over the land. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is known as the most intractable conflict in that it is unmanageable and has little hope for an end. Going back to the early 1900s, the land that is now Israel was part of the Ottoman Empire. After World War I, the British ruled over this land, and it was known as Palestine. While Palestinians situated in the land were developing a greater want for identity, Jews who were undergoing persecution saw the land as the promised land in which they could finally call home. Over time, the migration of Jews into the land increased, and as the Jewish population rose, tension between the Arab Palestinians and the Jews grew. Jewish migration into the land was then restricted by the British government, but it didn't last long as the horrific events of the Holocaust caused more Jews to migrate and raised world support for the Jewish state. In 1947, a UN proposal was made to separate the land into Jewish and Palestinian Arab states. The proposal was meant to give Jews their own state and Palestinians their independence, as it would be the end of British mandate over the land. This proposal, however, did not satisfy the Palestinian Arabs that felt as though they were losing control over their land, and this led to the Arab-Israeli War in 1948. Israel won the war, and the expulsion of Palestinians into neighboring lands soon followed. Soon after, in 1967, the Six-Day War occurred and Israel gained control over the Arab territories. Over time, the number of Jewish settlements rose within the Palestinian territories, and the buildup of frustration within the Palestinian communities caused the First Intifada. The Intifada was a Palestinian uprising that began with the throwing of rocks and Molotov cocktails and ended up including the use of guns and explosives. Leaders from both sides of the conflict ended up signing the Oslo Accords in hopes of peace. The Accords gave more freedom to the Palestinians to govern themselves. Extremists from both sides opposed the Accords, and acts of violence from both sides occurred. Eventually, another intifada began, and this one was much more violent than the first. The result of all the violence led to the creation of walls and checkpoints that allow the Israeli government to control Palestinian movements. Although this has decreased the amount of violence, it has not resolved the conflict which is ongoing today.
In Israel, the Jewish culture places a strong emphasis on the promotion of scholarship and learning. The way in which their society values higher education is exemplified by their high university educational attendance rate. In 2011, the country spent 7.3% of its GDP on all levels of education, and as a result has fostered an education system that helped transform the country and rapidly grow its economy over the past 70 years. The majority of Israeli children attend state schools. In state religious schools, intensive Jewish study programs are offered. Some schools focus almost entirely on Torah study and offer very little in terms of secular subjects. Schools in the Arab sector teach in Arabic and offer a curriculum that emphasizes Arab history, religion, and culture.
So today I'm going to talk about the goal of multicultural schools. An important goal of multicultural education is to improve the academic performance of ethnically diverse students by removing cultural and learning style incompatibilities between their homes and schools. And multicultural education addresses political and social needs and goals, as well as academic ones. And it is to promote the development of culturally responsible and responsive curricula. And it's also to facilitate acquisition of the attitudes, skills, and knowledge to function in various cultures. And it's also to eliminate racism and discrimination in society. And it's also to achieve social, political, economic, and educational equality. And another important goal of multicultural education is to help students acquire the knowledge and commitments needed to make reflective decisions and to take personal, social, and civic action to promote democracy and democratic living.
What are the limits of peace education in a sharply divided society? After hearing about the goals of these schools in Israel and their nationally radical educational initiatives, you might be anticipating that these educators would face some conflict in their endeavors for peace. It is clear that a school that suggests the integration of two conflicting groups will face conflict of some kind. However, it is not coming from the students or parents. It comes from those who don't believe in the school's goals and message. In November 2014, the Hand in Hand Max Rain School was subjected to an act of arson, suspected of being a hate crime that was radically motivated. The school was also defaced with anti-Arab slogans such as "Death to Arabs." Shortly thereafter, the Taj Mahal Coexistence Organization held a support rally to counter those threatening Arab-Jewish cooperation and promoting racism in Israel. Mohammed Marzouk, head of communications for the Hand in Hand School in Kfar Korah, noted that the attack brought out a show of community support for the school. The Israeli police arrested a number of suspects in connection with the arson attack. Following the arrest, the mother of one of the suspects said she would have burned the school as well, if it were not illegal to do so, expressing disgust and revulsion that Jews and Arabs studied together at the school. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin, along with his wife, Nachama, invited the Hand in Hand first graders to his official residence along with their teachers. He told them, "I am excited to welcome you to the President's resistance. You are proof that we can live side by side in peace. And we must not let difficult experiences, such as the one you have been through, harm our belief in our ability to coexist." Aside from dangerous hate crimes, these schools also find themselves subject to low enrollment. This is because, like the developers of these schools, most often the parents who desire to send their children to these integrated schools also have a vision for a peaceful future. The biggest issue then becomes convincing those who would not choose to accept the other group themselves and cannot fathom the idea of integrating their children to open their minds, or waiting for them to do so themselves. It is found that there are minimal conflicts between the students of the two groups within the school itself, and that the issue more lies outside the school. For example, one Jewish parent described how in a public park, a Jewish child playing with an Arab child would be seen as strange and looked down upon by both Jews and Arabs. The schools have started small, but enrollment does continue to grow. Some people believe that the schools are not the answer to the conflict, and many see it as just a drop in the ocean. However, others may see it as a very necessary stepping stone to a future of peace.